So I'm going to turn this over to Vern Stoval. Vern, thank you very much for doing the demonstration today.
Thank you. So a lot of this just is because of necessity. Say, for example, I have this that I turned and didn't follow John Kopp's instructions, last month to turn it to a finished thickness. It was left too thick and it just split open. And so most of the time you get this, you just throw it away. You can do other things with it. But I consider this an ugly split. Right? There are some nice times, nice splits. I couldn't find much at home, but I found this one. This one, it looks like natural, something natural. It's been. I have to figure out which way to turn this so it sets this camera. Okay. So, but this one is ugly. This one looks nice. This is a walnut roll. You can see the cracks. This is why I don't like to buy walnut. If you ever go to like Rockland and they have the blocks of walnut, the been all wax, you usually find these cracks inside. So I do not buy walnut. So you have to figure out, what are you going to do with these cracks? This one, I would leave the crack alone. These cracks are so small, I don't know if it's worth doing, I guess you could fill them. But when you have something this big, you have to figure out what you're going to do. You can fill it with epoxy, but then you have to clean it out. So how do you clean it out? You have your fancy tool here. All you need is a knife. And you just kind of dig it out. Right? You don't have to do anything. Take the little pieces out. Right? So you just clean it out, and you can sand it. Right? And partly to hide how thick this is, right? Because you don't want people to see that you have this really thick. So you can put epoxy in there and fill it up. Okay. Then you say, if you want to stitch it, usually before you start stitching it, you want to see what it looks like. Because when, I guess we can go on to the tool first. This is my tool for stitching. Right, this is a biscuit joiner or a plate joiner. And the reason I bought this was maybe 20 years ago watching Norm Abrams, right, on the New Yankee Workshop. He used to make a lot of furniture. So I thought if Norm thought this was great, I would buy it. I don't make much furniture, so I didn't usually use it very much. I did use it for making a bookshelf. That's how I joined the face frame and joined the face frame to, without using any nails or screws or anything. I was able to use this. And if you're using it like that, you set it against a piece of wood. It's nice and steady, and then you just push this part in, and then the blade comes out. If you haven't seen one before, it has a 4-inch carbide tip blade. And when the instructors were getting together, we were talking about these, and there were a couple of people that used them. And when they did the stitching, they were doing it by hand, and it was like different ways to kind of brace this. I had tried using it once before, and I was scared. I mean, this, you know, it's to try and push this in. Oh, that part goes in. So to push this in while having this hold on something, you know, it's like, no, I'm not going to do it. So I figured out there had to be a better way. There had to be a better way to stitch it. And so I remember I had this. 1-inch post with a piece of steel welded on top. And the reason I got this is there was a woodworker that passed away, and after the weekend of selling his stuff, they were saying, you know, come in, we've got to get rid of all this stuff, you can have it for free. And this had something bolted on top with something that went in here and another shaft that went in here, and it was like a reducer. And so all I did was take that off and recycle it, and I was left with this. And I like this so much that if I didn't have one, I'd go have one made, because I use it for different things. There are welding shops that will do this for you, probably not very expensive. I think Jim said he had some place to make it for him. But I know there's this welding shop where when I upgraded to a Powermatic lathe, the short tool rests were all short. The post wasn't long enough. So I found a welding shop that would extend them for not. I did 3 of them extended for like $25. So these are handy things to have.
So Vern, while you're on that, explain to these people what they need to be aware of when they go to a welding shop and ask them to make something that we need square on the lathe.
Yeah, Jim was saying that this wasn't straight across. And I don't know if this one is either when I start looking at it.
And your posts that you had welded.
Yeah, I'll get to it.
Okay.
But I was saying, it's close. But when I had my posts extended and I put them in here, they didn't go all the way down. They went down until where the weld was, and then they kind of stopped. So I took the straight edge to it, and I said, they didn't quite get it right. So I took an angle grinder, and the high point I just ground down until it fit. That was less work than taking it back and having them fix it. So, going back to the story, I had this, and I decided, well, I can figure out a way to get this to set on here. And it's not very complicated.
You went high tech on that, huh?
Yeah. You know, because at first you're just saying, well, does this work? Let me try it, see if it works. I didn't bring 2 of these, so we'll use the big C clamp, because that's all I have here. I like to use 2 clamps. One doesn't seem strong enough to hold it. Okay? And if you tighten everything down, nothing moves. So the only thing that's going to move is when you push the tool in. And so if you're holding it freehand, how do you make sure it doesn't wobble or anything? Right? And I don't know how to lock the
Side.
this thing to go up or down.
Up.
Oh, okay, there. But you need to make sure this is tight. So usually I don't tighten my piece on here. I notice that Some people do, but this is the one time I make that tight, so it doesn't come loose. And also, if you're, the first one I did it on, the crack kind of bent, and I wanted to center this on the crack. So, the easiest way to do that is to, when you're lining this up, you want the crack at the center, you use your chuck. You loosen the chuck, you turn this a little bit, tighten it, and then you cut your biscuit hole, then you loosen it, and you do it again. Rather than trying to fiddle with any part of the lathe, you just do that. Okay? The other thing is, you have to figure out where you're going to do it. On mine, it was a practice. I just drew a line every inch. And I think I did about 6. I don't have that piece anymore, so I couldn't bring it in. And all you have to do is, you have lines here which show you where the center is. There's one here, and then there's a notch here. So you can line that up. Or the other thing is I have another high-tech tool which I use to, for my lathe, the top of that piece of tape is the center, right? It lines up the center of this. So all I have to do is, and because it's a post, you can raise, this doesn't seem to get, it doesn't like this. This doesn't like the tool holder. Works better on a power man. You know, everything works really well on my one at home, but certain things don't work the same. Mine is a little over 10 inches up to here, and this one is 12 and a half. This doesn't reach that. So, you can get this centered from this line to my mark for the center, and so this one will stay at the center. Okay. You could make a, like John had, he had a collar you can put on here, or I have, which I didn't bring, I made one, it was out of wood, and it'll slip on there. But you need to see what your, the biscuits are, how big they are, right? Because you don't want a biscuit that comes way out here. That's going to not look good at all. And how small can you go? So you take a scrap piece of wood, and this is not quite the same. It's about the same diameter as down here. And as you get a different diameter, this will get a little bigger or smaller. It's not always consistent, again, because this is a curve on the blade, and this is a curve.
So is there a stop or something that you can use to control the depth? Or
Well, this will do 4 different sizes, and all it does is change how far it goes in.
yeah, okay, so there's a stop.
So I've done 2. I've done 2 in here. This is M, I guess, which means maximum, and 0, which is the minimum. It shows, and so I would look on here and I'd say, the minimum is probably all you need to do. You know, the maximum is going to go a little farther. And another way to look to see, it's like, well, how many do I need? There's another high-tech feature, which is basically some blue tape, the ruler, and the razor blade. And oops. So you can just say, where do I want it? Let's try and put one here. Put one here. Right? So you can put them there and say, well, you know, maybe I need to move it up or move it down. It's easy enough to change and look before you ever bother, you know, because once you cut it, you can't change it. You can't go back. So you have to figure out what you're going to do. I mean, you could, you know, maybe you want them sideways instead of straight. You can look at that ahead of time to decide what you want to do. Yes?
How do you do the one where it's sideways at an angle?
We'll get to that.
Okay.
We'll get to that. Okay? So, you can, of course, when I made that, I didn't just make one. So this is what it will look like. You fill in the crack with epoxy with a little wood dust, and I put 3 stitches in. So it looks a little better, huh? Yeah. And that way you've saved this piece. It's not a great piece. You know, there's still some other cracks involved, but hey, that's not bad. And if it was a really nice piece of wood without other cracks, then you've saved it. So, that's the basic of stitching. Right? But, I don't like basics. I like to change things. So after I had done that, my mind starts working and say, well, what else can I do? So I think the very next thing I did was I made this bowl. Okay? And I think the idea came, I was watching a YouTube video a long time ago in which this guy made this, he called it the Millennium Bowl, in which he tried to do techniques like this, you know, a whole bunch of different techniques on this one bowl. He had so many different techniques, the bowl was ugly. It was like, and he had done some X's, but he did them with a handsaw, and they were really thin. So I think in the back of my mind, you know, I had that, and so I could do that with the this. You know. So these X's are 45 degrees. So to do that, I put some plywood and a piece of 4x4 together, and I said, okay, I can do this. Problem with this is you don't have much room to get in here with the wrench. And I should have brought a saw.
You need a wrench.
No, I have a wrench. But we won't tighten it up down all the way.
You need a tool, Vern?
No, we're not going to be cutting with it. We're just going to. You ever try and drill so these holes line up? Somehow they never line up. Usually I get So you have to make the holes really big to be able to. But this plate is threads in the holes. And tighten it down. Now, the issue, you can use this. Hardest thing is to hold this while you're trying to clamp. You have to get all the way to the edge. You gonna take pictures of me struggling here?
Yep,
Look in the next newsletter,
right,
extra large.
Yeah, put it on YouTube here, it's fumbling.
for people to see forever.
You can use the, you need to be able to attach a drill to this. You can just zip it on, you know, like screws.
You thought about like a little piece of wood, a little ledge.
Oh, and other things I have. You know, you like to use the bar clamps, but they tend to stick up. But again, I like to use, you tend to run out of places. You know, and these kind of get in the way. So this is what I use to cut these. But how do you hold a piece of wood? Well, we'll take a bolt. Oh, come on, you're supposed to fit. I swear this one.
It has moved.
No, let me see it.
You want to swap it, Chuck?
No. I like my dovetail chuck. It's not fitting. I swear it's not fitting. Yeah, maybe I need another chuck. Because they don't work with another set of jaws, but I'm sure it's using these jaws. Isn't it really neat? Oh yeah, it is too big.
I'll get one big.
We'll fake.
Just goes to show you.
I'm so used to where everything goes at home.
Yeah, this
Because when you do this, you gotta split these into two parts. That doesn't fit. It fits the other one. But
So Vern, will you use the indexing when you're doing that setup opposed to just the spindle lock?
on this one, yeah, I used my indexing. Okay, so one thing I determined that my maximum width here would be 1 inch. Because when you're dealing with viscous,
Maximum of 1 inch, and then you have the 1.313 up for the 45.
well, because you have, this is what you're going to put in there, right? This is the 2-inch radius, because that's the size of the blade that's in there. So when this sets in here, you have to deal with the thickness of your piece of wood. I was going to draw it. A lot of them can be behind the camera.
2.62.
So, again, your biscuit is like this, like this. So, when you put it into your wood, you know, ideally, you have this. And so, when you're going to cut this part off, and cut this part off, then it all nicely matches. But if you make this more than 1 inch, say to here, what's going to happen is you're going to have something like, well, not that bad. You're going to have a little gap, and it won't look so good. Right? So that was why I determined it was 1 inch. Because you're dealing, and that particular bowl is pretty much straight up and down on the point where I did it. And it's always an advantage to be straight up and down. Because if on you have these parts, and then this is their, right? Because maybe you want to, you have a, you have the bowl, and you want to do the stitching in here. You could cut it and move it up, and then this still lines up. And because I finished the thickness on the bowl before I put the stitches in, because otherwise you're working again on this curve, and so that if you make it thick and then you go and cut it down, it's not gonna match up. So if you're doing finished thickness, that works fine. But what if you have a curved side, right? It's a curve. And if you take a section out, Oh, no, sometimes you don't want to take, if you take a section out, that's not an even thickness. If you just take a section out, then you can do your stitching. But sometimes you say, oh, I want to move it up. Right? I don't have enough to take out, I want to move it up. And so you cut it here, and if you move this up, it's going to be over here. It's not going to line. It's not going to line up, because it's originally it goes there. So that's where. Come on. It's going to be here. Okay. I need to do. Should have prepped. I should just done it. So what's going to happen is you're going to have this, and then your other part coming here is going to be off. They're not going to line up. The reason I did that, I finished turning it before I put the stitching in, is I didn't want to have to turn across the gap with these little pieces of wood in there. I just wasn't going to do that.
So Vern, are you making your own biscuits or can you buy those?
You can't. Yeah, we'll talk about how we do this. Well, they're not really biscuits, they're now just stitching clothes. Okay? So in this particular one, you can see there it's a curve. It's not quite to the finished thickness. But there's this, that camera's not going to get it. We need a different camera. The hole's way over here. But the holes don't go this way, they go this way. So I've had to mark it with a pencil. On the inside, the hole goes up to here. On the outside, it goes to there. So we have a lot more than an inch. So, I'm thinking, well, can I do anything with this? And I go, well, no, because I can't really that's, how much is this span? And it's like close to 1 3/4 inches, okay? And that's not going to work. Okay? So it's like, I can't do it. And if I because I have to get rid of all this wood is bad, and if I move this top down to meet that, say 3/4 inch, or 1 inch would be here, and then here to here. This is going to be sticking out farther than this. And maybe the thickness of this is still pretty thick, would be able to deal with that. So to do that, I would have to take this part out, re-glue this top onto here, then do the finish turning, and then cut this part out. And that just seems like a lot of work. Having to do it and redo it. But once you have decided that you're going to do that, you have to be able to hold this piece, because this part is held in the chuck. This part has to be held. So you get a piece of plywood like this. I got it on the faceplate so it'll turn. And you glue it to this piece of plywood. Because This is all going to be taken out, this will be free. And at that point, you want these to be held together, but temporarily. So what I used was some just hot glue, hot melt glue. A couple of sticks, which I had to set in here and then bring up. And do about 3 or 4 of them. And so that holds this top part with the bottom part. And then that way you can start doing the stitching. But when you do stitching, you have to avoid those parts that you've hot glued in. So you can only do maybe half of it. And only do one direction. So when you do that, then you glue in these little pieces. And then you let them dry. And then I go ahead and cut off all of the top because they get in the way. If they're sticking up, they can get in the way of using the biscuit joiner. So, and then after you've done half of them, you can go back in and do the other half. And you can take out this piece of wood that you put in there with hot melt glue. And that's the good thing about hot melt glue, you just break them off and they come loose. And so then you do the other half, and then you have to get them sanded down close to the finished thickness. And then you turn this the other 45 degrees and you do the other side. And you can see in this, if you look close, the first side I did pretty good. And then when I did the second side, I kind of didn't quite get it centered. Because that's very important to get this centered. Because some of these, they come up too high. And if you look on the inside, they do like we did in the picture. Some of this curve shows. And then, so you can hand this around and look at it.
Vern, when you put in the alternate side, you did one side, then when you go to the other side, doesn't it clip the first biscuit in half?
Right, but that's why you only do half of them.
But you have to be careful to glue all the cross together at the same time when you go back and glue the second biscuit in.
Right, you just put more glue in. You have to glue that part as well as the end parts.
Gotcha.
Vern,
And
oh, I'm sorry. You use commercial biscuits or are you making your own?
I make my own. I don't think, the commercial biscuits are just some,
Pressed wood.
pressed wood that expand. And, no, you have to make these. Now, I was talking with Bob about making, because Bob does his. And I remember making these, and to get them the right thickness is very difficult because it's a little over 1/8 of an inch is the kerf on the saw blade that's in the biscuit joiner. And so to get a little over 1/8 and 1 1/8, no wait, a little over 1/8 of an inch, it can be very difficult. Bob tends to use the drum sander, right? You just keep running him through. And I had to do something like that. I had to kind of rough cut it and then try and sand it down a little bit. I found a really good technique though, is to have a friend in the club that has a really good saw that can cut just exact thicknesses. And he's proud of that saw. He wants to show you how, how he can cut it. So he cut some wood for me. And that's the great thing about being in the club, because all these people can help you. Where is it? Oh, come on. Okay. So, he cut these pieces on his table saw for me, so they're nice and the right thickness. I give his name, but everybody's going to go ask him to do this. So now you have to cut these out. John's demonstration is he had a jig on his bandsaw where you can put it in and just turn it. Well, I'm not that sophisticated, so I just trace these onto here, and you kind of rough cut them. I've done a bandsaw, I've even done a jigsaw. Then you have to, then I sand them to the line that I've drawn.
But I could do that on my laser, no problem.
We'll show off.
But if anybody wants them making, then I can make them for them.
Wow, what a nice guy. Yes, John?
You have to make the circle, get a hole saw. You got 1.5 inch hole saw, it's about 1.25 inches.
You'd need a 4-inch hole saw. This is a 4-inch diameter.
I got him up to 6 inch.
Wow.
Another guy, another one.
Yeah. But this is not the first time I've had somebody in the club help me with something, with some tool and skill that they have that I don't have. So it's a really good thing to have friends in the club here. So, and the one thing that I didn't do that I would recommend is when you're gluing this, is shove a rag inside, because all the glue just drips down on the other side and it gets a really mess that you have to clean up.
Now, you split that bowl, you make a cut, 2 cuts on the outside of the bowl all the way through, and then put it back together and hot glue it?
No, you split it, but then you have I had the 1-inch gap. Then I had the hot melt glue to hold that gap.
One cut.
Well, no, this one was not one cut, because if you move them apart, then the edges won't quite meet. So this was probably 2 cuts, one on the inside, one on the outside.
Okay, because if you took like a 1-inch section out of that, and then hot glued it back together, I know you'd have a slight gap, between the two. Then you can go ahead and turn the outside, hot glue it, and then you can take your biscuit joiner and cut it all the way through, because it's going to be held together, until you finish cutting. I mean, is that another way of doing it?
Well, again, if I was going to do that, like I was saying on this example, I just use regular wood glue. If I was going to, take this section out, put this back together, put it back together, I just do regular wood glue, then finish turning it, and then take the gap out that I'm going to span with these little, kind of like biscuits. But again, there's maybe other ways. This is just the way I've figured out how to do it. And then you have to sand these off, right? Because there's going to be some sticking up. John showed a little saw, right? You can cut these off. And it's kind of rough on the inside. He was just doing it on hollow vessels, so he didn't have to do the inside. So it's kind of hard to use this on the inside. So I've done different things. I have a Dremel-like tool called Weed Shear. And actually, I have it hanging in front of my lathe pretty much all the time. We'll make this a little holder for it. And on the end here, you can put a carbide cutter. And that's what I usually do. I start with the roughest. I kind of get it down, and then I put this sanding drum on, and I'll sand it down until it's just about flat. And then you can find enough, finish sanding. But on that bowl, it's still very difficult to sand little pieces, kind of. And I was kind of sanding everything, and it kept hitting, kept catching. So try and do it the best you can. You could hold a piece of sandpaper like this to kind of get everything even. But it takes some work to do that, to get everything sanded down together. And there's a lot of glue to clean up. Anything else? So let's talk about making those. I think I got this at Penn State a long time ago. I mostly used it for when I'm segmenting hollow vessels. It's really good to, sometimes when you've mounted the bottom in a chuck and then you do the top, you put it in a chuck, so you can mount a chuck on this, as well as a faceplate. So if you want to just make a few of these, maybe you don't want to, bother your friends to make one. So how do you get that thickness? If you have a sander like that over there, you can do it, but that one goes really fast. So I just have a homemade disc sander. Most of the time the setup, it's not much. When you actually run the biscuit joiner, it only takes a second for each cut. But the other advantage of having this little plate is you can put this right up here. So I've drawn the line, which I rough cut, and I just take it and just sand up to that line, and that works really well. So if you don't have one of these, you should make one. Just a piece of plywood and a brain bit here.
That's just a self-stick disc, right?
Yeah, just a self-stick disc. And also, if you want to get the thickness, you can just sand it here. And if you don't like putting your fingers there, you just get a piece of wood.
What grit do you have on your,
I think this is 80. That's good enough. You're just gluing these, right? You like to have a little texture for glue. You can just touch it up here. If you're just doing one or two, you can do that. Very simple. And this works for other things.
Somebody cut them out with a CNC.
I was gluing something, these biscuits in something very thin, and I didn't want to spend a lot of time reducing it after I glued it in, so that's all you're going to be using it for this whole thing. Just one little part of it. So what I did is I sanded off all the excess, so there wasn't going to be very much sticking out at the end. And again, that's where this works, because I'm using a little piece here. And if you drew your lines on both sides, you can just turn it around and do the other side. Just an easy thing to do. Okay, now the problem I had with that, the bowl was getting the biscuit joiner centered. Right, because once you do this at an angle, these lines, these little notches, are meaningless. Right? So, and the first time you're doing it, you put it there and, oh God, it doesn't line up. So again, another high-tech way to get it to line up. Use some more of the blue tape. And so you can figure, when you're looking at it from this way, you can see where the center is. And so I just drew pencil lines. And I think this was the 45. Right. So that way, this is a 45. I know that's where the top is. And to know where to center it on the side, I just did 45 the other direction. And so when I'm cutting this way, this is my center line for this way, and this is the center line for this way. Because, you have this up here and you're trying to look from, because this is shoved right up against the wood, you can't really see much. But if you do these pieces of tape, you can say, okay, there's where I need to line it up to. And you just cut out where the blade is. And my next attempt at I'd made one of these before. I called it my hillbilly burial urn. This one was a box. It has a lid on it. So I was able to get these pretty close by using this technique, okay, to center it, which was much better than I did on the roll. So that's all this is. So this has nothing to do with fixing any cracks or anything. It's just purely decorative. But if you look online, you see these jugs. They almost all have X's on them. So they have to put X's on them. Yes.
The urn that you made, the hillbilly urn, was that end grain? You have to put them in one by one and let them dry when you're doing end grain, so you don't chip it out?
I don't think this is end grain. The grain is going this way.
Yeah. But when you crisscross them, you got that little diamond square. You didn't have any trouble with it chipping out right there?
No. I don't know, I think because I very seldom use the biscuit joiner that it still has a nice sharp blade. Because I don't use it for hardly anything.
You just had a different jig, like 30 degree or something?
Right, I just made another one. For a different angle.
Yeah.
So. something. So, yeah, you have to make things. It's not all freehand. Okay. This one I don't. Use the other smaller. Some of these inside. So this one has a hole. This one and that other bowl are liquid amber. If you ever work with liquid amber, it's really wonderful, but every now and then you find holes when you go inside. There was a branch that was there that died and it grew around. And you don't find it until you start turning the hole. So, again, I figured it out because the holes never go straight this way, they go sideways. This one, it would be from here to here. And the problem is this seems like kind of a small thing. So I try and figure out what am I going to do. When you have this, you can say, well, I'll just plug the hole, right? Fill it with epoxy and then we'll do it. I was like, no, I don't know if I want to do that. Or I could just make a shorter bowl. Right? That might be an easy thing. But, you know, maybe that you don't want to do that. So, what can you do? Do you ever save pieces that you cut off other bowls? I do. Because, they just take up room. So I have a couple of them. So I figured, so my idea is, well, maybe we use two different kinds of wood. Problem is this is smaller than this. But where do you look? This is where the hole is. I'm thinking, you know, maybe if I get down to there or a little bit there, I could glue this onto there. But does that look good enough, just having two different kinds of wood glued together? No, I'm thinking maybe I could stitch it. And I was even looking at making a zigzag stitch. But the problem is, because of this different diameter from here to here, that they're going to cross at different points. And so I figured, that's not going to work. So maybe, and using our handy high-tech thing, is once I join the two pieces of wood, I just make a stitch going across.
When you're joining it, you're just gluing,
Just the gluing this to this.
okay, side grade and side grade,
Yeah.
and no dowels or anything.
No. So it's just another way to decorate the bowl using two different kinds of wood. And I think this was set up at 36. I tried drawing it when it was 48 just to see what it would look like. And it crossed even worse, I think. So it's just I've already done one with the X's over the gap, so maybe I could try something different this time. again, you do it, to have this as a clamp, to clamp that on. And if that doesn't fit, I have another piece. Now this one I was smart enough, I turned it off before I finished turning. So it's nice and thick. So it's easier to try and fit this in. See that one, it's thicker on both sides, so I know this one would fit. But I think I'll have to turn it down to here first and see if the other is really going to fit or not. And if not, then I could use this piece. And I like it that it's two different colors. I save wood.
Got more room than I do.
Get boxes. Throw it in boxes. But this is one of these. I had this big piece of wood, and I turned it really high, and I knew I wasn't going to use that because it didn't look good at all. So I said, well, I'll cut it off and save it. So I did. So, an alternative, if you don't have one of these, I don't know where I got this, probably some garage sale. Black & Decker Workmate 8-inch hobby center and vise. And I figured out, oh, maybe I could use that. And it's this plastic thing. Also. And actually this is pretty strong. Okay. And all you have to do is attach your biscuit joint to this. To do the side ones, I probably make a jig that I could attach it to over here. Because it has a couple of holes, you can screw it down. But the nice thing about this is, you can do angles, right, and then lock it in place. This one goes either way. It won't go quite 30 degrees, but I think it'll go 30 degrees, so if I turn this, because it'll go this way. So I could even use it on this higher, this lay this higher by just tilting it back a little bit. And I'd hit center, but the center would be going this way. And it just has two pieces. Again, this is set up for the center on my way. And it's solid. It's just, if you don't have that piece, and again, I just found this at a garage sale. I haven't used it for anything else, so. What's this? were talking about how deep we can go on on our little biscuits. Should have a whole bunch of them. We wouldn't have to look for them. Because again, if you only want to cover a short distance, there's not much wood in there. And because of if you ever look closely after you've made the hole with the biscuit joint, at least mine, it's not straight across. When you do the hole, it kind of goes like this. There's a peak in the middle. And I guess maybe most of the time it doesn't bother you, but it's not that much. So what I do is I file that down because I don't like it. Problem is, most wood files are too wide, so you have to find a narrow file. I found so I just have some crummy old metal file because it's all I could find in my dad's old stuff. I just try and go at an angle to try and file it down so it'll be flat like this.
Couldn't you use a block plane?
What?
Couldn't you use a block plane?
You're only doing it with 1/8 of an inch.
Yeah.
You have a block plane that's 1/8 of an inch wide?
Well, you're only making it flat, correct?
Yeah, but I'm making it flat within that, the groove that I've cut.
On the inside.
On the inside. I mean, you could sit there and do, file this. Because, and it shows up if you really do a thin one. Because I have this bowl which I decided to try doing a little stitching from the back. And you can see it's not nice and even. Right?
You just hold it still for a second.
All right, so you can look at that. That's what happens when you have a real thin piece. Now they do make a biscuit joiner that's smaller than 4 inches. This is Bob Nolan's. He brought it in for me. I think the blade on this is, what, 1.5 inches? If anybody has one. So you can do a lot smaller biscuits. Say, like for that one, I could have used this and it would have worked out better. And he was also saying, because this is a smaller biscuit, it's thinner. So the other ones that I've had made for using with the big joiner aren't going to fit. And he said that a lot of times you can just take pieces of veneer and just glue them together until you get the right thickness. And then you have the added decoration of different colors. Problem is they don't make these anymore. You can buy used ones online. I was looking and some people ask a lot, some don't. Does anybody need a break? take this off. So, that's it. So you don't have a biscuit joiner, and you're not inclined to buy one. Another place we can get cracks is right here, right? We always find these, right? Getting close to the pith. And so I could just put this on here and take the biscuit joiner and go into there. Or if you don't have a biscuit joiner, you can use your table saw, right? Just go through with the table saw. But I did this once before, and I put it on the table saw, and somehow this doesn't slide real easily, and I don't feel real good holding it like this, sliding it, you know. I mean, where you put the fence over here, and are you going to be able to hold it straight? And this was a sled that I made for doing some some special segmented pieces. And this one just happens to fit. And I made this to hold it down, just a piece of wood. I drilled the hole mostly because otherwise I would have to have really long screws. And these are already 4-inch screws. I'm not centered. I should have made it even on both sides, which I didn't. You just whipped it out and I didn't. So this part will go into the table saw. I can cut the groove, and it's all held solid. And you just slide it in there. So that's just a different way to do that. Now the issue that I have with that is what does it look like if you just put one little biscuit or one little piece in here? I think that's going to kind of look odd. So I would tend to, well, let's put one on the other side. And you probably want to use a lighter colored wood instead of the dark walnut. And maybe put some on this side and this side too. You know, the one I did before, I thought that wasn't enough, so I put a segmented ring on top too. But it's all aesthetics, it's all what you want to do. You can see this is walnut. There are knots with cracks in them and stuff, so those I can just fill with epoxy, right? But when you have a real thin crack, I think it's easier to just take it out and put something else in there. thing we have, what do you do with all those frisbees we made for the picnics, right? So this is one. It's not even made out of fancy wood. That's the one. So I just found another piece of wood that's about the same size, put it on there, drilled a hole, and I put a screw in it, and that's what holds it on. I did the lines because I was thinking maybe I can make a clock out of this. Right? And go back to my tape kit. And say, okay, maybe I want to do it. And we always do 12, 6, 3, 9. So, there are the 4 part. And then if you want to do something on the other parts, I was thinking that, again, I could do 1 inch, be smaller. But then when I started looking at how deep it would go for 1 inch, it would look kind of funny. So, what else do you put in there? So the dots, which are just 3/8 inch dowels. Drilled a hole, stuck the dowel in there, and I don't know that it looks the best, but that was just something to do with an old frisbee. And all you have to do is probably drill the hole in the middle a little bit bigger and put a clock thing in there. And so this is what we're going to raffle off. It's a kit. You have to go get a clock mechanism and figure out how to hang it. I'm not going to do everything for you.
So whoever wins that in the raffle, we're gonna throw it as a frisbee.
I assume it'll still fly. All right. We're going on different directions here. We're going to really do it different direction. So I have this piece. And again, a lot of times you find out different things in wood. And this one is this really punky area right in here. It's hard to see. But, and there's cracks and things. Well, how do I get rid of that? I did this once before, a few years ago. Nobody probably remembers. But it's, I'm looking at this, how much do I want to cover up? Only here. And that looks like too little. I'm gonna go to there. So, let me show you how to cover it up.
Thank you.
Hey, Vern, you wanna knock that power cord out of the way? Thank you.
Still going to remove just a little. That gap, I'm going to cover with string. Good thing Claudia's not here. She might tell me when I borrowed it from her. No, Claudia wouldn't do that. Peter Nakatani would, but... So, my experience, the glue dries really fast. When you spread it thin, it will dry really fast. So what I use is this extender that John introduced us to. Usually you use it for finishes, but I use it for the glue. And I had something that required me to glue 36 pieces of hexagonal wood together at one time. So I had to coat them all with wood, and I didn't want it drying out. So I experimented with this extender. It works very well. And then so we're just going to brush it on. We're getting a little off the topic of stitching.
Hang on.
Yeah, if I was really good at this, I'd turn the weight on. Come here. I hadn't done this with the extender before, so maybe it's too soft. I found this works as long as you go uphill. Once you try going downhill, it doesn't work anymore. And the nice thing is, if you mess it up, you can just pull it all off and do it again. You don't want to stay there, do you? Feel the glue starting to dry out here. Uh-oh, we're going downhill a little bit. It doesn't like it. A little more. So we've mixed two different. You've just mixed a different kind of medium than wood, which I like to do. It's all the same. See, if I was at home, it would be right here. And I always put it there, so I'm not at home, things aren't where they're supposed to be. Where did I put that? Switch them. It's, you know, you partly covering up a crack, partly covering up some pinky wood, that you can just cover up the string.
Vern, if you coated that whole thing with that glue after you got it wrapped, is that
I guess so. You could try. All right. Now, we'll get into the part.
Hey, Vern, another 10 minutes, 15 minutes?
All right.
Okay.
Now I have this nice bowl that has a crack that goes almost from that edge all the way to this edge. Is it salvageable? Yeah. Sure it is. You just got to figure out a way to do it. I had a bowl once that was this shape. And I got close to finishing it, and it's hard to see, has a crack. And it had I think there was a crack going on the inside. So I cut this out after the bowl was pretty much finished. And I filled it with some plywood, 11 ply plywood, just because it was a different color. If I had to do it again, I would just use plain wood, but I used plywood. And then I finished turning it and made a bowl. So you could do that with this. It would probably be helpful. This is too big for the table saw, but if you had a nice bandsaw like that one, and because this curve bends, you probably want to take about 1 inch out. Stick another piece of wood in there, and then turn it again with a whole strip of wood in there. And don't say you can't do this, because I saw a high school kid do something similar. They turned the bowl, and like a third of it, or a fourth of it, broke out. And so what the instructor had him do was just cut it off. He laminated several different colors of wood, and he glued it on. And then he had an angle grinder with one of those carbide, the little pieces of carbide, and he ground it out, kind of roughly got it into the bowl. And he finished turning it, and he turned it really nice. So if a high school kid can do it, you can do it. Right? And so that's kind of what I did with this. You put another piece of wood in, but before you glue it, you kind of trace around so you can cut that excess wood out. And so when you glue it back together, it's sticking out a little bit, but this has been just rough turned anyway. So you can turn this into a nice bowl. Now, a really hard one. I was making this for beads of courage, but since, those kids may not have the strength going through all their treatments, I had to test it out. So I tested it out by dropping it on my garage floor. And so this is where the cracks are. Not just one crack, right? There's two cracks. So what do you do with two cracks? You know, you know, I just kind of think about things, you know, what am I going to do? And since we're running out of time, I'm thinking maybe that doesn't look so good, but how about if I kind of do something on the other side that matches? Right? And make a design. Now, how do you, I'm not going to do this with a biscuit joint. And I'm thinking, well, how about a trim router? Get a 1/8 inch. But I'd have to mount this and have a set a piece of plywood this angle, and I'd mount the trim router on another piece of plywood that has a curve, so I could kind of keep it pointed toward the inside. I'm just thinking it's something to try, because I just don't want to throw it away. I could just cut it to here and make a dog bowl, right? that John likes a lot. But it just, there's, you have to think about things, right? Things, what can I do to do it? So, the attitude shouldn't be, oh, I can't do it. It should be, oh, what can I do? And then you can do a lot of things. Because a lot of people would say, never try that bowl. It's like, why not? It's just a bunch of little steps to do that. And all these things are just a bunch of little steps to come up with something different. Any other questions?
So if you route that out, then you fill the fill it with epoxy or something?
You could do that, the epoxy. I've filled epoxy on a curve. What I generally do is I put a piece of tape here, and as I put the epoxy, I put the tape over it to keep it from running. And usually it's pretty thick anyway. But if you get, too far, so the tape will keep it from running out. Or you could cut, those, like the biscuits that just get real thin, and you can probably get it to bend. I don't know, but I'm just thinking.
What about a yarn holder? The yarn?
Yeah, if you could get it to fit this, you could do that. And you see, there's people, everybody has a different idea. So, all right, well, thank you very much.